Warning. What you're about to hear is born of long years of deep friendship, shared experience, brutal honesty, and the reconciling grace of Jesus Christ. Please do not walk up to the first black or white person you know and start this sort of banter. It will not end well.
Glad to be with you again, Robin, and want to get just a little update on what you've been doing. Know that your book is coming out soon. So since we've last spoken, I guess it was about a year ago now, what has been going on in the world of Robin DiAngelo?
What's been going on I may have had a part-time job, but I am full-time traveling and writing, presenting, speaking. And that article that I wrote a few years back, White Fragility, just resonated so deeply with so many people that I've turned it into a full-length book. And that comes out in June with a foreword by Michael Eric Dyson.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. I mean, he's such a wordsmith. I love how maybe he should have been a hip hop artist, because the way that he weaves words together.
He's wonderful. Actually, I was like, don't make your foreword better than my book, okay? But I suspect it may be.
We don't want you to be fragile about that. We don't.
No, right? He's hilarious. He's like, there's a new racial sheriff in town. Kick your crutches to the side. Robin DiAngelo's going to call you in. So, yeah, it was fun.
Oh man, that's a beautiful thing. So now I know. Around the last time we spoke, you said that you were doing your first overture into the church, going to speak to, I think, the Lutherans. You did a conference for them. Tell us about that. How did that go, placing the ideas of white fragility in the religious context as you begin to shake your head?
She's already shaking her head right there.
Well, if we went out to happy hour and you said, tell me your most harrowing story doing these presentations, I would tell you about that convention.
Oh, man.
So the first thing is that I was in front of about 1,500 kind of ministers.
Okay.
Nice.
And I was on a jumbotron, and I was pretty sure nothing's going to happen here, but I'll tell you where it's going to happen. It's going to be at the workshop that follows this keynote. And sure enough, the room just filled with people, right?
Oh, wow.
All a standing room only. And I was about 3 minutes in, and I heard some shouting. And lots of amens and the shouting was scripture. Somebody was shouting a white male scripture at me.
Oh wow!
Oh bless us, Lord, and forgive us. Oh,
Jesus says, John 7:9. I don't, something like that.
Right.
Something like, we're all equal, and then literally shouted at me. Are you saying Jesus was wrong?
Oh my goodness.
Okay, yeah, right. I'm up here. I can't tell you it's wrong.
So the exact words that came out of my mouth, really. Well, no wonder it's a book now.
He just kept screaming at me, are you saying Jesus is wrong? And of course, I think I actually went like this, ha, ha. Just like, no.
So of course that example has to be in the book, right? That example, because that's like a tale of. That's like the Taylor case for white fragility, right?
Right.
The room's erupting with, all the hear ye, right? And, I'm having lots of thoughts in my mind, which is like, well, I guess it depends on who's interpreting. I'm having these thoughts. But what I say is, okay, everybody breathe. Just like slow it way down. I made them pause. Mm-hmm. And then I said, no, Jesus wasn't wrong. But we don't live on the spiritual plane. We live in the physical plane, in the here and now. And if we want to usher in the society and the community that Jesus came to proclaim, we have to address inequality here on the physical plane.
Right.
And a lot of people have said, how did you know to say that? And for me, it was just an amplified version of colorblindness. We all bleed red. We're all human. And so it went on like that, but there's one more piece to this story, right? I mean, it was intense trying to control this crowd.
And that's when the fight started.
The few people got up and the whole room was really hard to keep together. And then at the very end, there was, everybody had their hand up, and I could hardly get through what I was trying to get through. And this white older white man had his hand up for a while in the front, and we had like 2 minutes to go. If you've ever given a talk, you know the bomb is always thrown in the last 2 minutes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Never enough time to respond appropriately.
I foolishly say, well, would you like to have the last word?
Oh, yes, he would.
Don't ask me why I offered the last word to the white man, but I did, because I kept noticing him with his hand up, and he said, of course he says, yes, I would. And he stands up, and he says, may I lead us in prayer? And everybody's like, yes, yes. Okay. And everybody's got their head down, and he says, dear God, thank you for bringing this fierce woman to us to bring your message that we need to hear. Thank you, Lord, for Robin DiAngelo. You keep speaking truth to power. And I'm standing there going, does this happen?
Oh, wow.
He is asking this entire room. He's making them pray, thanking God for my message.
Oh, man. Amen. Hey, won't the Spirit work?
Amen.
I couldn't. So when it was over, as soon as he finished his prayer, I said, and on that note, we end. Thank you very much. Ran the hell to the taxi that was waiting to take me to the airport. I actually went up to him afterwards, and I just said, can I give you a hug? And he grabbed me by the, loving way. He grabbed me by the waist, and he said, you're the smartest woman to walk in this room in 25 years. You keep speaking truth.
Amen. Amen.
So there you go.
Hey.
Wow.
Hey. See,
wow.
so the culminating message is once you face your fragility, people, you can be redeemed and experience this transformational engagement where you are revved up and ready to go. But the question then becomes on facing that fragility, right? Because you and I were talking, Robin, as we were working on getting things together for the show, and as you know, I kind of had a hiatus, a little gap in the communications, because had to deal with some white fragility in the halls of power in the Episcopal Church, and we did.
Whoa, hold on. I'm confused. White fragility in the halls of our own blessed holy institution?
Well, yes, that would be correct.
I thought maybe I heard you wrong.
No. I am talking about our beloved Episcopal Church, and the reason, as I say beloved, it triggers me, right? Because when you talked about if we are supposed to bring about what we proclaim on the spiritual plane, it has to take place in the physical realm, right? That's the Lord's Prayer. Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. That's what we say in the Episcopal Church in terms of becoming beloved community, right? That we are becoming this beloved community, and how white fragility gets in the way of that. And it's especially troubling for me around white allies. And I'm bringing this up because I just want to get your take on how you see this and what to do in response. Because here it is, you have someone who's in power, white person in power, and they misstep, as people will do. As I tell people all the time, we are learning to dance this dance, right? And as anyone learns to dance, when you go to waltz, when you go to tango, whatever, you're going to step on toes. But because we decided that we're going to dance, we don't use that as an opportunity to shame ourselves or shame each other because we stepped on each other's toes. But we have to also acknowledge that we have stepped on some toes. So here's somebody in power doing this dance, steps on some toes, and decided that she was going to take liberty by saying nigger. And I tell people, I say it because like we talked about in our last showcase, that word is powerfully troubling, and so I drop it in there purposefully so that people have to cringe at hearing it or wondering why I say it and so on and so forth. But she, white woman, missteps and thinks that she can say it and takes liberties to say it because she's quote unquote quoting somebody in a story. And then there's people who say it's a problem. There's people who say it's not a problem. She finds black folks who say it's not a problem, but there's still black folks who say that it is a problem. And instead of just humbly burying herself and taking ownership for misstepping, there's the fragility, the defensiveness, the things of that nature. The I don't need to apologize beyond. I apologized before to the people that were in the room. I don't need to speak from my position of power and say anything further. So how do you, and if there's more questions, because I could go on for forever, and I don't want to go on for forever, right? But, how do you respond to instances like that? And what do you see in that? How do you respond to that as an intellectual on this topic? Yeah.
Well, so the first thing is that I try to figure out how all of that is functioning, right? I try to understand what is driving that reaction. So before I even go to how do I interrupt it, I think it really behooves us to understand how it works. Why is she responding that way? What are the fundamental assumptions she's making? What is the paradigm she's operating from that would allow her to respond that way? And then what's problematic about it? Because if I can map that out, then I know what to speak to. And so the first thing, it's just this overarching, it's so liberating to start from the presumption that, of course, as a white person, I have been thoroughly conditioned into a racist worldview. Ibram Kendi uses the analogy, it's raining down on us, white supremacy and its messages, and we don't have umbrellas. Of course, I am wet. So once I start there, I inevitably have a racist worldview, racist assumptions. I've developed racist patterns. And quite honestly, I'm invested in not only racism because it serves me so well and is so comfortable, I'm also invested in not seeing any of this because it challenges my identity as a good person and it will require something of me, right? And once you start there, it's so liberating. It's like I don't have to defend and deflect and deny and all the moves this woman made in order to push away any question to her entitlement to say whatever she wants to say. And if it lands on you problematically, then you figure it out because I get to do what I get to do, right? When it's actually really transformative. I can stop deflecting and then start trying to figure out, well, how is it coming out in my life? All this conditioning is indeed coming out in my life. There's no way it couldn't be. If you hung around me long enough, you'd be noticing all the way, right? It seeps out of our pores.
Yeah.
And don't we want to know how it's seeping out of our pores so we can stop it? So that's the first thing, the kind of framework we need to start from. The other thing I noticed in her is a classic equal equals equity. In other words, if you get to say it, then I get to say it. If we all get the same, then everything is fair. And in fact, it doesn't account for power. And that you may get to have things that I don't get to have until we usher in that beloved community. And we're not there yet. And so you have to be willing to say, oh, I might get a little less of the pie and you might get a little more because you're starting with less than I'm starting from. Yeah. And then, in fact, that is fair and equal. So she's kind of got this, if you say it, I get to say it, with no account for her position racially and the difference in impact, right? And maybe the last piece that I thought of is, I will never be free of my conditioning. And I know that Case absolutely understands.
What conditioning? What do you mean?
So receptive to feedback on how his unaware racism is manifesting. And that's why you love him.
Amen.
I continue to run my racism. I'm not going to be it's a journey, not a destination, right?
Right.
What's different is I do it less, right? I look back over things I said and did, and I cringe, right? I do it less. I'm actually able to notice it myself more instead of depending on you to have to take the risk to tell me. I don't get defensive. And I have really, really good repair skills. Repair skills are what build trust. I don't believe that you expect me not to have racist patterns and assumptions, but I think what I've heard is that what you want to see is where are we going to go when those things come out.
Right.
Can you talk to me about it? Will I receive that with grace?
Right.
Will I try to change the behavior? Will I seek to heal? We'll have a deeper relationship, even though I ran my racism at you. And I wish white understood that.
Amen.
We're just so afraid you're going to give up on me, so I'll be as careful as I can, and in fact, I'll have an inauthentic relationship with you.
I like that piece, because that's the nail on the head right there. Like, when we take the risk as people of color and tell you about your racism, you can either get defensive and attack and deflect and so on and so forth, which just reinforces our narrative, and now we are upset for having taken the risk. Or you can receive it with grace, like you said, and with humility, and make repair and things of that nature, and then we have a deeper relationship. And isn't that what we're supposed to be after, especially as people of faith?
Seems pretty simple. It just seems really simple, because if you give me that feedback the first time and I don't respond well, you're probably not ever going to give me that feedback again, and there will be a wall there, and I'll think, oh, we're doing fine, but that's because I've conveyed to you that I can't hear it, or that I can't hold it. And I think that white fragility functions as a kind of racial bullying, quite frankly. We make it so miserable for people of color to tell us and give us that feedback. I mean, I often kind of facetiously ask people of color, how often have you given white people feedback on our inevitable but often unaware racism and had that go well for you? Right? And that's the answer. That's the response I get. Like, yeah. So, how much of it do you just take home because it's not worth it? Because it's probably going to get worse, because I'm going to actually punish you even more for giving me that. I'm going to burst into tears and cry, and, you're going to have attacked me, and I'm going to start withdrawing from you. And so white fragility is an incredibly powerful form of white racial control. And I actually don't care what's driving it. I don't care how sincere it is. The question that white people have to ask themselves is, how does it function? And it functions to punish people of color for trying to talk to us, right? I just saw a beautiful quote, like, white privilege is not being aware of how you're hurting people of color and refusing to find out about how you're hurting people.
Right, and to that, what that says there is that you don't care. You know what I mean? If you refuse to find out how we're being hurt, then what you're also saying is you don't care. You don't want to be in relationship with me.
Yeah, in the good-bad binary is I call the good-bad binary, right, is another one of those. And I actually have an image of a pier or a dock, and there's these pillars that hold the dock up. It looks like it's floating on the water, but it's not, right? And what are those anchors that keep racism going, even though at the top of the dock is all the saints? I treat everybody the same. I have people color my family. All that stuff on the surface hasn't changed our outcomes, right? How's that? Right. How is it that most white people think I'm absolutely against racism, but racism's getting worse, quite frankly, right? And one of those key linchpins is only bad people who intend to hurt others on race and know that they're doing it could be racist. And as long as that's our definition, we beautifully protect racism. Right. Because of course you're going to offend me if you suggest I did something racist, because you've just suggested I'm an immoral person who meant to hurt you. Right. And I'm going to have to now defend my character. Right. So it's just it looks progressive, right? Racists are bad. But how does it function? Protect racism beautifully. Right. So that was in there too. Go ahead. Okay.
Well, I was just, the echoes in our own tradition around the idea of practical theology, right? That how does it function, right? Is just that the importance of using that almost as a lens. And I wonder if that's a lens for those of us who are still trying to figure out and recognize our fragility and recognize our privilege, if using that maybe as an entry point, or if you recommend some other entry points for, how do I identify and recognize my fragility? I have all these things that I say I believe, right? I have all these things that I say about, well, I treat people all the same and I don't see color, all of whatever it is. I have these things that I say, but how are they functioning in the world? How am I functioning in the world? Seems like it might be a helpful entry. Or are there other entry points for how to ID and recognize that?
Yeah, so I had two thoughts, and one is that kind of like I'm sure that I'm not racist. I'm sure, and my question back would just be, how do you know? Like, why are we so confident? How do we
Yeah,
know?
prove it. Like,
Yeah, who are we accountable to?
You see,
When's the
y'all
last
can
time?
ask a white person that question.
Right? I
If
mean,
I ask
I
a white
live.
person that question.
Let's imagine I live in the suburbs. I don't know people of color. I never talk about racism. Why am I so confident that I have no racist thoughts, ideas,
Right.
or patterns?
Right.
Right. Um, the other one, again, that question, how does it function, has never failed me. Every piece that I've had the deepest aha about has come from asking how it functions. So I often share this story. I grew up in poverty, right? And pretty abject poverty, homelessness, foster care. I'm in academia now. I feel intimidated in academia. When racism comes up, even though I see it, because it's my area of focus, I have been quiet about it because I feel intimidated by how smart everybody else is, and they're going to throw some research at me, and I'm not going to be able to defend myself verbally. So my silence in that room is coming from a place of inferiority, not superiority, right? I'm feeling inferior intellectually because I grew up poor, right? But when I've stepped out of myself and said, so how is your silence functioning in this room when you notice racism? It's like, oh my God, it's functioning to not only protect and collude with racism, but I will be seen as a team player. I will actually benefit and get ahead by my friends. And so that's not acceptable to me. And what's so powerful about pushing through the silence, once I realize you're right now colluding with somebody else's oppression, is my sense of inferiority intellectually because I grew up poor is a lie, right? That's the lie of classism. And when I push through that lie and speak, I'm healing my own kind of internalized oppression while using my privileged position. So it's just such a powerful way to center race. For me, is a powerful way to address all intersections, right? So again, how did I come to that awareness? I asked myself, how's your silence functioning right now? It doesn't matter what's driving it, right? How are your tears functioning right now, right? And that leads me to something I really want to talk about, which is shame. Whenever any narrative that white people jump to really quickly and easily, for me, is suspect, right? If that's easy for us, we better question it because there's a reason that's easy for us, while another narrative wouldn't be. And shame is a real easy one that white people like to go to. And I was working with a group recently of white people, and I had them pair up and answer this question. How often do you actually feel shame in relation to racism? Seriously. The range would be between 1% and 5%, quite frank. Come on, white people don't walk around feeling shame.
Right.
Take me to a gentrifying neighborhood, and I'll pass by a black person, and for a moment I'll feel a little bit shameful
A little split
about
second.
it's gone. And then I'm going to go over to the Whole Foods and just so excited that there's finally a Whole Foods in this neighborhood. Right? I love it.
Right.
Yay. And so it's like, first of all, I call bullshit on this shame. You know, maybe guilt, but why don't we say guilt? Why do we say shame? Well, shame is more precious. No one should feel shame. And as soon as you invoke it, you begin to get people that want to coddle your shame and help you with your shame and give you resources again. But why don't we own the fact of how seldom we feel shame instead of amplifying those rare moments in which we do? Right. So again, how does my shame function? Okay, so if that's what I want to go on and on about of how shameful this workshop's making me feel, then how does it function? What do I do when I feel shame?
Right.
Well, I wither and withdraw and I get small and I don't talk. How does that function in a conversation about racism? Let me ask you, Gabrielle, what's that like for you when I'm all, I feel really bad and I'm small and careful and I actually get this idea of withering back in shame because you just shared a heartfelt story. How does that land on when white people do that? Is that looking good? Do we look good to you?
No, it's like shutdown. It's like, okay. I remember I had that experience in seminary. Case and I talked about this. You know, I had this experience in seminary in my homiletics class where some people said some. I mean, the whole experience was traumatic. You know, like I was the black voice in homiletics class whenever because I had a classmate who was doing his field ed in a black parish, and every time they wanted to analyze something, the professor would turn to me. So Jabril, what do you think? Like I'm supposed to be the black voice, right? But then near the end of the class, when I had had enough of all of it, right, and they said something incredibly offensive, right, about that essentially challenged the identity of blackness, that nothing good could come out of black people because this music is corrupt. You know, so we can redeem rock and roll. We can make any rock and roll song be praiseworthy, but then we have this horrendous rap music and no one can make that praiseworthy. And so, you know, it was interesting because one of our classmates looked at me like, when that was said, he looked at me like, oh my God, I can't believe that was just said. But I didn't say anything. And the teacher asks me, Jabril, what do you have to say? And I was like, you really don't want to hear. That was exactly what I said. You really don't want to hear what I have to say. And she breaks down crying. And so now I'm like, oh shit, I just made a white woman cry. I'm going to be Emmett Till out here because, oh my God, my life is on the line because heaven forbid I, the big black man, make the white woman cry. I better start speaking. You know, let me protect myself.
And so what happened in the room when she started to cry?
People started tending to her. Everybody was like, oh, you know, I can't believe she's crying. And, you know, everybody, you know, so now here I am. I didn't even do anything.
So
I
now
declined to speak.
The original racist incident that you're responding to is completely forgotten.
Uh-huh.
And it's all about whether you mistreated her or not. And so then the room divides into camps, right? Who thinks she was mistreated and who doesn't? And we can go there and we're done having to look at or take accountability for what was said that caused you to say what you did.
Right.
So how does it function? Well, it beautifully protects really, you know, the status quo, quite frankly.
Yeah, indeed. Poignant example. That was a very poignant example. You know, I'm glad you asked that question. Case and I have talked about that experience on numerous occasions, but never really looked at it in that context of how that instance served to protect white supremacy, served to protect racism, served to protect supremacist thoughts, you know, you know, and all of that just by that incident.
And to rechannel resources yet again away from you and onto white people.
Right.
It also marshals all the resources in the room because that's social capital. Being comforted is social capital. Why weren't you comforted about the egregious, right?
Right. No one cares.
Racist statement that was made, right?
I wasn't in the class. I wasn't present. No. I'm sure I would have responded completely differently. I would have been there to comfort you, Jabril. I promise. For the record.
Just for the listeners out there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. We all want to believe, right? And I think that's to your point, Robin, about how white folks run away from it because you don't want to be not good people. And if I ever, speaking as a white man, if I ever do something racist, I'm not a good person. And I am a good person, which means I could never do anything racist.
What's the number one evidence that people marshal when they get accused? I put quotes around accused because it's the word accused in itself means it's unjust.
Right.
Somebody gets accused of racism, all their friends come on and say, no, he's a really nice guy.
Yeah, I have black friends.
Right? He couldn't be racist. And by that definition, no one's racist.
Oh, yeah. I
often say to a room full of people, if you cannot let go of your definition that a racist is an individual who consciously and awarely doesn't like people based on race and intentionally sets to hurt them, then I will agree with you that none of you are racist. Right, if that's your definition. And I will also agree that it's offensive that I would suggest that you are.
Right.
But that is not my definition. If you cannot let go of that, we are not moving forward. It just so beautifully protects racism.
Yeah.
It exempts basically everybody.
Right. And it's like I have good intentions, you know, and it's like as I was even referring to people and like, you know, toxic charity, you know, your good intentions don't really matter. Like I'm not saying your intentions weren't well thought, your intentions weren't good, that you were trying to make a good point. Yes, but so because you were offensive with good intentions, I'm not supposed to be hurt.
I think it's actually irrelevant, and in some ways, maybe the good intended person is more dangerous because the person who doesn't have a good intention generally is aware that they don't have a good intention. So at least I can work with someone who's self-honest, right? Who's self-aware. But the one who's in denial, I can't work with, right? Or you know, it's difficult. And you want to get.
That to me is, I'm going to make the white man wait for a while.
Yeah, okay, good. All right. Look at me. See, I've been conditioned to take care.
But that to me is why this is so salient for especially white allies, right? Your work is so important in my mind for white allies because, like you said, somebody who, I hate to sound stereotypical, right? It's going to offend a lot of people, but the stereotypical Trump supporter, right? I know where they're coming from. I am not expecting them to be a friend. I am not expecting to trust them in an environment. I am not expecting them to have my best interest at heart. I am not looking to them to appeal my case or to stand with me. I see them coming and I am paying attention. The white ally, I may let my guard down around. And that person may inadvertently, not purposefully, but inadvertently stab me in the back.
I think white progressives are the hardest, right? Yeah, there's a knife in your back, but you know, I'm looking right in your eyes. I probably don't even know I put a knife in your back, not consciously, right? Not consciously, but subconsciously, honestly, it's a really thin veneer, a mere scratch, and a lot of resentment erupts even from white progressives. There's just no way I could avoid internalizing resentment and contempt towards black people. Right. I don't say that with pride. It's just, how could I miss that message? Anti-blackness is so deep in the culture and so relentless. Of course I have it. And it emerges. Are you shocked how fast it emerges? Do you remember all those white Seattle progressives going to hear Bernie Sanders and being asked to just give 4 minutes of silence? How dare you? You know, how dare you? Ask something of me that you don't deserve, right? It's pretty intense. So I think we're pieces of work, right? I think it makes for a really irrational stew inside of us. You know, we really don't know, but we really do know, but can't admit it, but we feel, you know, superior, but we feel ashamed about it, right? We're just a mess inside there. And all of that functions to kind of keep our positions intact.
Yes, you can speak now, Case.
Thank you. Oh, wow. I mean, so much. Robin, one of the things that I really appreciate, and we haven't had a chance to read the book yet, so but
it ain't out yet.
I know what I mean.
Pre-ordered. Let me say this before I forget. I just got a starred review in Publishers Weekly.
Oh, nice!
I'm pretty happy about that.
That's awesome. Congratulations!
So I pre-order. I will pre-order it after we're done here. The intro and the descriptions that you sent and the way you've written before has been really powerful, as you've talked about even here, to get away from the good bad dichotomy, to get away from this very fragile, you know, on off identity piece. And you've talked about stamina. Is a word you've used in other places and you've alluded to here, right? That we white people don't have in this case. And so it feels like now that we've got this how does it function kind of almost methodology lens that might help us see. Do you have some suggestions, I guess, without giving away too many chapters, right? Do you have suggestions for how to build that stamina? That's my first question, and I'll say my second question. If you better
say it now because we might not let you use the mic again. You know, but no.
Well, that's why I was gonna get all in. I'm also aware that you know this is real. Your work is very powerful for the individual, and I want to make sure that I at least ask about how institutionally right? I mean, I can see how that functions might have some echoes at the institutional level. And I'm wondering, after you tell me how personally to build up this stamina, we might also address a little more systemic piece if we've got time.
Sure. Well, we won't build a stamina if we don't expose ourselves and get out of our comfort zones, right? So everything you can attend or participate in or read Black Twitter or read everything you get your hands on, go to talks, build relationships, right? You have to get out of your comfort zone and try to listen way more than you talk, right? Just pay attention, right? And you'll begin to see it's like, oh, this is kind of inevitable. It's not really personal, right? All of that helps you see that, while at the same time trying to change the paradigm underneath, right? Try to really notice if you do feel defensive. Am I feeling like I just got told I was a bad person? Oh, that's the good bad paradigm. Writing down your emotions and your reactions, and then when you've kind of worked through them a little bit, going back and asking yourself how they function. I could say don't get defensive, and that's not realistic because it's kind of before you can even think you have that reaction, right? But try to hold it, try to process it. And also something that was really helpful for me is, let's say Jabril gives me feedback on something I've done that was racist, and I'm feeling very defensive. And I might say, ideally, I would say, I thank you for giving me that feedback. I'm feeling a little flooded right now. I feel a little overwhelmed by it. I want to sit with it, and then I'll come back. I think you'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
And then I could find 50 white people to go into agreement with me that he's wrong and overreacted and I did nothing racist. So don't go find those people. They're everywhere. Go find Case, and I can certainly name other people. Find me and vent, oh my God, I just feel so stupid and embarrassed and that wasn't fair and he was really hard. Just get it out, and you could hold that if I came to you. You could hold it with compassion. And then once I got clear, and hey, I might need to cry, but I'll be crying with you, not with him, right? It's kind of, I often ask, why aren't our hearts breaking, for God's sakes, right? But our tears are powerful, so where and how? And then you and I put our heads together to really map out, okay, so how was your racism at play? And to the best of our ability, we get clear. And then I go back in and I say, Jabril, I've been thinking, thank you. And this is how I think that was racist. Did I get that right? Did I miss anything?
Right.
Anything more? Because of course, Case and I are thinking alone as two white people. We're going to miss some nuances. Anything else that needs to be said or heard that we might move forward? I actually follow a series of steps. So before I came back to you, I might say, would you be willing to grant me the opportunity to repair the racism I perpetrated to you in that meeting?
Wow. Yeah.
And I need to be prepared for you to say, no, I'm done with you. Right? I'm done. That was further than I'm willing to go. And if I can't hold that and accept that, I'm not ready to apologize to you.
Right.
That's the risk I take, that you might give up on me, but it hasn't happened to me yet, because just my asking you that question demonstrates humility.
Amen.
And you say, yes, I'm willing to grant you that opportunity. Then I say, well, here's how I think it played out. I apologize. Did I miss anything? Anything else that needs to be said, done, heard? Can we move forward? And I was recently on the other side of this class, and I kind of taught that formula. And then I've never been on the other side of it. I've just done it, and it's worked. I've repaired. But there was a white male that got really aggressive with me as a facilitator, and so I gave him feedback about how that landed. And the next day he came back, and he had a little piece of paper, and his hand was shaking, but he had notes, and he followed the script. But he said, can I repair the sexism? And then he read his notes of all the ways he understood that was sexism. It was so powerful for me.
Wow.
And so much different than, because he showed me that he understood, that he gained knowledge. And I would imagine, Jabril, if I that you'd be like, okay, that hurt me, but man, that was worth it if she got that out of that.
Right. Right.
All of that builds our stamina, right? One other piece that I will do if I'm doing a white affinity group is I say, I'm going to give you feedback when I need to, and you are not allowed to explain yourself in any way. You can't talk. You have to hold it. Mm-hmm. Even if I literally misunderstood the word you said bigger and I thought you said something else, and you're like, of course you want to explain to me that you said bigger.
Right.
No, you don't get to, because you have to practice just holding, feeling misunderstood, explaining yourself. It just starts to build our capacity for it.
Right.
I don't know. That's a lot of stuff. I mean, this is not easy or simple. But for me, it's just years and years and years of stepping in it, getting feedback, being around people of color, listening to their stories, changing my paradigm. All of that builds our capacity.
Yeah,
that's a powerful first step. That I like. That the how is this functioning almost seems like it creates just enough space that this isn't just personal. Right, that there's a little, you open up just enough space that it isn't just personal, that then I can also go back and look at me personally. That's powerful. Wow.
Good.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's about me and it's not about me. I did that thing, but I'm a product of my society. Everything's fine. It's okay. Like just
right.
Right.
That to me is the big piece that I try. It's hard for white folks to hear it from me, right? But I try to get folks to understand it's not about an indictment on you being good or bad. The indictment on you being good or bad comes when you abjectly refuse to hear. You know what I mean? That's when it's like, okay, yeah, now I can't vibe with you. I can't fool with you. I'm gonna leave you alone. The indictment doesn't come because you stepped on my toes, because you said something offensive, because you did something offensive, because I take for granted that we are inundated by this culture and by this society, and that you, until proven otherwise, are a person of goodwill, which does not mean that you won't offend, but it does mean that when you do offend, you will make amends. You know, that's relationships 101, whatever the relationship is. Because I love my wife doesn't mean I'm never going to piss her off. You know,
right.
It means that when I do piss her off, I'm going to try to find a way to make it right. And not justify myself and not tell her why it matters that I didn't mean on hurting her feeling. Like, none of that matters. You know, what matters is that she was hurt.
Well, and it's a huge moment of risk and trust. I wish white people understood that. We tend to construct you as an aggressor for telling us that feedback,
right.
But it's hugely vulnerable for you to give me that feedback, because there's a history of harm between our groups. And any listener who saw your response when I said, how often has that gone well for you? And you laughed. It rarely goes well. And so you're going to take a chance on me with a lifetime of it not going well. You must see something in me that tells you maybe this time with this person we can go there. And that's precious. I mean, if you want to use a biblical phrase, you're throwing your pearls. You know, am I going to crush them?
Oh, that's so funny, brother. You remember that time I told you about this discussion I had on one of the clergy groups where my ultimate response was, I'm going to take back my pearls now.
Yeah.
Because, and what I meant by that is, you have identified that you are swine. So, don't cast your pearls before swine. I've been casting pearls. It's time for me to take my pearls back and just keep them to myself.
Well, and lots of resonance here. I think, Robin, you mentioned humility, which is something that Jabril and I have really begun to dig more and more out of in this work of reconciliation. That for white people, and particularly for white Christians, that this is an underutilized, underexplored, completely ignored aspect of our faith. That humility is a necessary precondition for reconciliation when I live in a system that gives me more power and gives me more privilege than other people, right? I have to step down from this place that society tries to put me in, and that's a place of humility. And that's a really powerful place. And you've identified that as one of the ways to be in this work.
Yeah, and, I mean, again, simpler said than done, but we won't likely get there without all those other pieces. We're not going to be able to continue to live the lives we were set up to live and think we're going to get there.
Right.
It does require something of us, right? We really do have to change and risk and make mistakes and hold and bear witness. I've been thinking about this lately. One of the things it means to be white is I've never had to bear witness to the pain of racism on people of color, and I've never had to bear witness to the pain I've caused people of color. So how do I build my capacity to bear witness? And that isn't going to happen outside of relationship, but I'm also not going to build any capacity for compassion, humility, and humanity outside of relationship. Right. And my life is not set up to put me in relationship with people of color and Black people in particular. Most of our lives aren't set up that way. And if Black people are in my life, it tends to be because they came into my orbit. I met you in my workplace. You were in my congregation. I'm not going outside of my comfort zone and going into your places, but those are the things that it requires of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about that as I was sitting in church the other day in the parish that I attend. Like, there's a few Black people there, but I was just found myself thinking about as I'm raising my teenage Black boy and my baby Black girl, and I'm like, man, I'm in this white church. It's still a white church. I wonder how many of these white folks would be at a Black church. And I know the answer, you know what I mean? It's like, and I sit there wondering, I'm like, how many of them have ever even been to a Black church? And like you said, it is like you said that, a lot of the times it's because I've entered into your sphere, and it is still your sphere. It is.
And honestly, if you're in my sphere, you're probably a middle or upper class Black person, so you're going to be comfortable in that way too. Like, everything about that, you probably grew up with white people. Most Black people that succeed in white environments grew up often in white environments, right? I shouldn't say most. I just see a pattern there, right? And so they're used to white people. They're comfortable with white people. They're assimilated in particular ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say additionally, the thing that because I didn't grow up around white people since I grew up in the Virgin Islands, which was like 98% Black.
Well, then how could you be so comfortable for so many white people? I'm being facetious here. Point made.
You can tell by all his success, right?
Right. But yeah, there is a lot of risk involved coming into that sphere, because at the end of the day, you are in that sphere. I am in that space with your blessing, quote unquote. And I can only be in that space so long as you allow, because the minute I upset you, the minute your fragility reacts, my tenure in that space is on borrowed time.
Have you seen the film Color of Fear?
I have not. No.
It's a very powerful documentary of a group of men of cross different races coming together for an intensive weekend to talk about racism. But there's one scene in particular where a Black man named Leonard basically says, I used to work in corporate America, and I'd see black men walking down the halls, and I'd think, man, I bet he can't wait to go home and be a Black man again. Because you walk down the halls of corporate America with pride, you're going to scare people.
Oh, yeah.
You show intelligence, you scare people. You got to shuffle. You got to get small as you move down those halls, not to scare us. At the same time that I will never admit that you scare me, and I might not even be conscious that you scare me, and that has nothing to do with the reality that you scare me.
Right.
And that I'm responding to you from that lens, right? This is what makes this so hard, right? The power of implicit bias, and that we've been taught that the only thing happening is what I'm aware is happening and what I agree with, right? So I'm against bias, and so therefore I'm free of it. All of this is part of what just makes it so often so difficult.
Yeah.
Cases question about institutions, because of course we aren't institutions, but of course institutions are made up of people, right? So how do you change policies and practices without changing the consciousness of the people at the tables? So I'll often show a picture of the House Freedom Caucus. Have you seen that famous picture of the House Freedom Caucus, which is probably the most powerful committee in the U.S.? It's about 20 white men around a conference table. Mike Pence is in the middle. They're all got suits on, 100% white, male, upper class, conservative politicians working on the health care bill, and I often make a joke. And when this picture was taken, they just had gotten to women's reproductive health. You love this little piece I do. You can get 1, 2, 5, 10 women in that group. When we're just doing gender right now.
Right.
If you haven't changed the consciousness of the men at the table, they might survive in that group. They won't thrive in that group. They're not going to be truly heard or seen in that group. And yet that's the embodiment of institutional power. That's why I show the picture. It's like, this is the physical embodiment of institutional power. And if you don't change their consciousness, it doesn't matter who you stick at that table with them. Right? So to change institutions, you got to change the people in the institutions so that they will change policies and practices.
Right.
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 Yeah.
That's like dioceses in the church. So many dioceses in the church that talk about racial reconciliation and how important it is to them, but none of the diocesan staff is black. And if there are any people of color on staff, they're the receptionists or the secretary, and no one with any sort of decision-making authority. But we're supposed to trust that you're really serious about reconciliation.
Well, and that's another point I make is then I kind of go further and say, well, now imagine that one of them says, maybe we should get a woman in here. And of course, they don't all agree. But so what they're really doing in this picture is strategizing on how to get more women in their group. And I just pause, right? It's 100% males sitting around trying to figure out how to get more women. And that's what we do, right? All the white people at the table going, gosh, we got to get some more people of color in here. But they're not talking to people of color. They're not going out and asking the receptionist.
Right.
But of course, if they did ask the receptionist, how intimidating would that be? Right? I mean, there's just so many layers here that we're
and
clueless
then
about.
how does the fragility respond? Because I often say, when white folks go out looking for black people to come along to the table, or for people of color to come to the table, they're looking for a particular type of person of color that doesn't upset white power,
Well, I always
and
say,
it's
right,
usually that person.
They put you on every committee, right, because we got to get some diversity. They don't pay you anymore.
Right, exactly.
But I will often say, if you want to stop getting asked to be on every committee as the token diversity, just bring up racism on the committee.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that pretty much be it.
That's pretty much it.
Actually tell them what they said they wanted you there to tell them, and then that's pretty much going to be the end of it. And you'll be a problem.
Oh, yeah. Case in point, So, I could do this all day, right? And I am by no means cutting us short, but I know that you have time, right? And I don't know what your time is like, so I want to make sure that I get this question in, just in case we're coming close on time. Because we've talked a lot, right? And we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of rich conversation, all of which comes out of your upcoming book, White Fragility. Release date is in June 26th?
26th.
Right.
But yes, and you can pre-order now.
And you can pre-order. We're gonna put a link to that in the show notes so that you can pre-order. But all of these concepts come out of the book. Everything that we're talking about comes out of the book. You can find it in the book when you read the book. But Robin, to the listener out there who's been enjoying all of this as we're coming up on the hour mark of conversation, what would you say is the single most important takeaway you want people to gain from reading White Fragility?
That you cannot get where we need to go if you can't let go of your definition of a racist. I think it's the root of virtually all white defensiveness, and I think it functions to make it virtually impossible to talk to us about what we inevitably absorb. And as long as you've reduced a racist to an individual who consciously and intentionally seeks to harm people based on race, you will protect and uphold racism. You will respond with fragility, with upset, with offense. You have to understand it's a system. It's the system we're in, and nothing could have, or did exempt you from its forces. And it's on you to figure out how you were shaped by those forces, not that you weren't shaped by those forces. And if you want to be a unique and special individual, then use every aspect that you see about yourself that makes you different from any other person, and then figure out how all those aspects set you up to collude with racism, because it's the water you're in. All of it set you up. I can't repeat that enough. Nothing could and nothing did exempt you from the forces of racism. Please try to figure out how those forces manifest in your daily life, because our outcomes aren't changing. And I don't think they're going to change until we change what we even think racism is.
Oh, that's amazing. That's very powerful, brother. Brother, what's your thoughts, man?
I'm right now. I'm wondering if and as people are watching this video, right? Like they're watching you laughing and smiling, and Robin, gesticulating, and I can't. I'm trying to focus on the camera, so I can't see my own little picture off the end, and I'm pretty sure that they're seeing something like, oh shit. And I don't know. I want to claim that and be okay with myself for all of this just washing over really powerfully. I feel for all the preachers out there who do listen to our podcast and see this video. I mean, oh my gosh, if we can't recognize how humility and bearing witness and not being afraid. I mean, all of these things have such rich echoes that I think, in my own bias, in my own perspective, bear so powerfully on the Christian faith that we are equipped to go forward into these things, and we've been failing miserably at it as a church, right? As a white church, I don't preach about humility. What are you talking about, right? And yet
it is so countercultural.
This opens up in incredibly powerful ways. And so for those of you watching the video, yes, I mean that I'm trying to laugh and be along, and I'm also getting smacked just like you are about just how powerful and meaningful and deep, and how much just the echoes and the consequences of this work could be in all facets. It's powerful. So thank you very much, Robin, for coming on.
You're so welcome. Let me speak to that just a little bit. I mean, but you are modeling, like you're listening more than talking. Right? You're not rebuttaling, like you're asking sincere questions there's a curiosity there that is a grappling to understand. That I think that's really important modeling. And there's a question I often offer, like when I get to the end of a workshop and you go around and people will say, what's one step you're going to make? And they'll say, I'm going to keep reflecting on this, right? Because that we do need to reflect and bear witness. And then my question is, well, how will people of color know you've reflected?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. How will your reflecting function?
Right.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't wait until we're finished. We feel have arrived before we act.
Right.
And the reflection is a part of it. But if it doesn't translate into action, it's functionally meaningless. If you get better at recognizing racism, but don't actually act to intervene with it, then it's meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So people will say, "Oh, I don't need that workshop. I read your book." And I will just say, how will people of color know you've read my book? Like, what's different?
Right.
So that's what I want to offer the listeners is, yes, bear witness, yes, hold, yes, reflect, but it's got to lead to different kinds of action.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
deeper
the number
engagement.
one question I get when I finish a talk is, okay, what do I do? What do I do? And here, that question bothers me. And you'll know why when I offer. So the first thing I say is I'm going to offer you a question back. If that's your question right now at the end of this talk, what do I do? Then my question for you is, what has allowed you to be a full functioning, educated adult in leadership and not know what to do about racism? Why in 2018? Why 2018 is that your question?
Right. Oh, I love that question. Right.
How have you managed not to know?
Right.
And it's a challenge back because I find it a disingenuous question. I find it a problematic one. Just give me the answer. But it's also sincere. Take out a piece of paper and start writing down how you have managed not to know. And maybe the first thing on your list is going to be, I wasn't educated. Okay, good. There you go.
Get educated.
The second thing is going to be, I don't talk about race. Third thing is, I don't know people of color. Fourth thing, I haven't cared enough to find out. And if you can write that down and look at it and live with it, God bless you. But I can't.
Right.
So probably the very first thing you can do is to break with the apathy of whiteness. Take the initiative and find out. There's a million things out there. Google it just like you would if you were interested in anything else. Right. So reflection, bearing witness, humility, and action.
Yeah, and I like to say, as the person who has more often than not been identified as the angry black man, right? I always like to say, find an angry black man to be in relationship with.
There you go.
Don't just find the black person that's going to make you feel comfortable, but find the black person that is willing to be in relationship with you that is going to make you uncomfortable, and then sit with that.
Yeah.
Because that says that when you talk about getting out of your comfort zone, that says, yes, I am making sure that I stay outside my comfort zone by being in relationship with somebody who, by their nature, is always going to put me outside of my comfort zone.
We will not get where we need to go from a place of white comfort. That's for dang sure, right? I'm comfortable virtually 24/7, right? White comfort equals racial status quo equals white supremacy, because that's the racial status quo, right? So, yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you, guys.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you for sharing with our listeners, or for sharing with us. One of the joys of doing this show, and from having you on, is that in under the guise of educating our listeners, we get to have some transformative experiences for ourselves. And so I'd like to reiterate maybe we'll make the white man here have the last word, like the white man at the Lutheran convention had the last word. And give thanks.
He summed it up good. Thank God. Yes. Thank God for Robin and Jabril. Thank the Lord. Amen. Seriously. This is.
Oh yeah. So y'all be sure to pre-order. Click the link that we're going to post. Pre-order a copy of White Fragility. Drive those pre-order numbers up, because I know how important that is, and then that way she can debut as a bestseller.
That would be cool. Here's my dream. Because I'm at the airport every week. I want to walk by Hudson News at the airport and see that book there. That's my little dream.
Right, exactly. Don't we all?
Hold my breath. Wouldn't it be cool?
It would be awesome, right? Yeah. You'd be like, that's my book.
I'd be sitting next to someone on an airplane and be like, would you like me to sign that for you?
Right.
There it is.
But wonderful to spend some time with you, Robin. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
The Lord bless you as you continue this work, and I know we'll continue to be bonded together, sister.
All right, you take care. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Racial Heresy. Be sure to visit our website, racialheresy.com, to post your questions, comments, and feedback, and to share your own stories of life as a racial heretic. Want to hear more? You can find past episodes of Racial Heresy on iTunes and the Racial Heresy website. Want to hear even more? Invite Racial Heresy to speak at your conference, council, church, training, or event. Email us at ebonyandivory@racialheresy.com or visit our website for information on speaking engagements.